Hey everybody, David Costello here, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow and host of Growing Your Firm podcast. Today's guest is Jassen Bowman. He is the founder of Tax Resolution Academy, taxfirms.com, and co-founder of the software startup Prolaera. He's also an author of a topic that we are going to dissect and dig into today, and it's all around how to drive profit in your firm. So we're not going to be able to go through the 200 plus pages in the Profit Optimizer book that you put together. We're going to tell people how they can get a copy, but we're going to pinpoint a few really critical ones that I think our listeners could take advantage of starting today. But before we dive in, Jassen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. I really appreciate having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think there's so much to unpack. You wrote so much in the book that you just released. But really quick, is there anything you'd like to add to the intro, or did I nail everything?
You nailed everything. I think the only thing that I would add, and it's kind of the topic of the book, but just as an umbrella opening here, I want all accountants, enrolled agents, tax attorneys, everybody listening to this podcast to understand a very critical thing about their business. The profit level, the profitability, the profit that they extract from their business is a choice. It's driven by a lot of other choices and decisions that they make in running their business, obviously, but the level that they grow to, it is a choice. If they want to keep their business small as a quote unquote lifestyle practice, that's perfectly fine. If they want to grow it into being a big four public accounting firm, that's fine. Because where do you think the big four firms all started? They all started with, right, 1, 2, 3, 4 people in an office, right? So whatever you want your business to be, whatever lifestyle you want it to provide for you, it can do. An accounting or tax practice is one of the most amazing wealth creation vehicles that exists in America. I firmly believe that.
Well, this is a perfect fit for the show. And look, if you're listening to this thing and you've been following our podcast, I'm assuming you're not satisfied with the status quo. You're not satisfied with where you're at as a firm owner. So let's just dive right in. I'm thinking everybody coming in and saying, look, I want to do more. I want to increase profit. I want to increase this asset that I've been building for X number of years or months or heck, even days. So as we dig into making this choice, where do you want to begin? What is one of the profit drivers that you feel like is a great place to start with?
The source of everything is systems. I am a systems guy to the core. And this comes from my background. When I first got out of high school, I joined the Navy. I spent 6 years as a nuclear power operator on an aircraft carrier. And in the nuclear power world, you don't do anything. You don't push a button. You don't turn a valve. You don't do anything without referencing an engineering checklist. Everything is done by a checklist. And that was hammered into me, and it's for safety reasons, obviously. But that was hammered into me so hard that I carried that with me into everything else I've done since. And so the beauty of embracing systemization, doing things by a process, is you get several benefits from it. First of all, repeatability. You do things consistently. You deliver a consistent end client experience. You do things right every time. You don't have to rely necessarily on what's up here in your brain. You don't have to try to figure out how to do something on the fly every time you do it if you have a written procedure for how to do it, right? If you have a procedure for your client intake, for the various conversations that you're going to have with them based on the services that you're delivering, how you do the work. And it doesn't matter if it's compliance, planning, advisory, whatever it is, having a workflow, there's something there about your company, I think. If you have a pre-programmed workflow, and you do all this stuff systematically, you're not losing billable time trying to figure out how to do it every time. It makes training your staff drastically easier and faster, right? And so if things are easier, more repeatable, they can be tweaked to improve them if they're written down. All of this directly relates to profitability, because the less time that you have to waste reinventing the wheel every time, the more time you have to actually service paying clients, which drives profitability. So
yeah, absolutely. I have to chime in because you're right. This is near and dear to my heart. And I think,
right.
When people are thinking about creating systems and becoming more efficient, and the world of technology, right, is where we get to play, I think we sometimes overthink the solution, right? If step one is get it out of your brain, have it documented, have it standardized, and have it easily accessible in a cloud environment, start there. I think it's, I know the world of workflow and workflow technology can be really intimidating, because people will think, well, do I just want this? Do I want this plus time to billing? Do I want this plus client portal? Do I want this plus, do I want to overhaul my tax software? Well, oh, wait a second. I was thinking about getting Slack, but maybe I should stick with Teams. Oh, wait a second. It's just like, whoa. Start with one, get it out of your head, get it centralized, make it easily accessible. You can optimize later, but just get the ball rolling. And I think, and I'm sure you've seen this a lot of firms you work with, if you don't have something like this in place, then the symptoms are you overhire. So your profits are being destroyed. You have more drama because you're chasing around more people that are doing things ad hoc. Clients are frustrated because they're getting an inconsistent client experience. And then what happens is the firm owner goes, I have to save this. I mean, we all love being the firefighter, the superhero, the Superman, Superwoman, and say, you know what, I got to fix it, which is 3 steps backwards. And so this is, it just hits the nail on the head where, get it down, get it on paper, standardize it, and you can always tweak it as you go, as you learn.
Totally. I first started doing consulting work with other EAs and CPAs and tax attorneys about 10 years ago. And in the entire decade I was doing that, one of the most common early questions they would ask is about software. What technology solutions should I put in place for this? And just like what you just said, where do I start? Do I start with CRM? Do I start with tax software? Do I start with tax resolution software? Because a tax resolution guy, I'm coming to them, to talk to them about bolting tax resolution onto their existing practice. And so, above all else, just take a step back and evaluate. Okay, what are the levers that are going to make the biggest impact, right? It's not necessarily the biggest burning fire, right? It's the thing that's going to move the needle the most. And you fix that first, then you move on to the next things. And so for a lot of firms, they don't have the fundamental infrastructure in place to begin documenting their processes to begin with. Okay. And so that's where I recommend that people start is even if you have no staff, you have to do it yourself, that's fine. But if you do have staff, have your staff start to self-document the work that they do and how they do it, their processes. Well, first I do this, then I do this, then I do this. And it's okay if they skip steps, if they don't, if the process isn't complete the first time it's written down, because the purpose of writing it down is so that you can improve it over time. You can fill in the gaps, right? And so again, not just to be a shill for Jetpack, but if you have an infrastructure tool where you can start to assemble those workflow processes, and so that you get a view of what your systems actually look like. And you have a tool in place for documenting them and actually doing them. A problem with paper checklists, and I'm the author of another book called Tax Resolution Systems. It's a book this thick full of nothing but checklists about how to run the tax resolution office, how to do the marketing, how to do the work, interacting with the IRS, all that stuff. It's a book full of checklists. That's what it is. But there's an inherent difficulty with using paper-based checklists, right? And it's that it can sit over here, where we are in a profession where we stare at our computer screens all day. This thing that's sitting over here, we may never look at it, okay? But if one of your 6 monitors has your systems portal open, you are much more likely to use it in our digital day and age. So again, not to be a shill for Jetpack Workflow necessarily, but it is your show. So if anybody out there listening doesn't have a tool for just, again, that underlying infrastructure to run the systems that run your business, then definitely sign up for Jetpack Workflow. That's what it's there for.
I love it. Your check will be in the mail. I didn't know you were going to go down this rabbit hole, but I love it. So, but look, I think going back to something you mentioned earlier, if you don't have this in place, here's the dangerous cascade. You start to become overwhelmed at work. So you get more butts and seats. And you know what? The danger is more butts and seats feels really great. I employ 4 people. Now I employ 7 people. Go around, hey, I have seven employees. Hey, I have 11 employees. You feel really great. You feel established. It's a nice vanity metric you can tell people about. People go, wow, you're really something. You got X number of employees. So you feel really good about that. With more employees, opinions increase, frustrations increase, right? Nothing against building a team. You should. It's a great thing, but it could confuse the urgent and the important. And you articulate it. Let's go after the important. What are the key levers that will elevate our profit? Well, that might be mixed with what is urgent that the team might see. And they might say, look, we need to go into Slack. I know we're using Teams, but Slack has this thing, this add-on, this plugin where we get to connect, or they're asking for X, Y, and Z. And you're like, okay, well, let me investigate this. Let me go down this channel, because this is what I'm hearing all the time. And the reason you're hearing it is because you might have overhired. You're getting a lot of opinions, and there probably might be a need for it, but it's not the most important thing. So you start going down this path where you're just driving towards what is the most urgent, and the firm becomes exhausting because you keep chasing that never-ending path versus saying, how do I get leverage over my time? So that's where, obviously systems plays a big, big role. We could go on for systems for probably 4 days. And so, if you want to go on this journey, we're here to help. And we'll talk a little bit more about it, towards the end. But let's say you have the systems mindset, or you're using something like Jetpack Workflow. What's next? What are some other ways we can start to elevate our profits?
So in the book, I talk about 12 big ideas for boosting profits. Obviously, we don't have time to go through all of them. But one I definitely want to talk about, aside from systems, once you have that foundation built, then one of the things that a lot of accountants don't think about, especially accountants in private practice, smaller firms, they don't necessarily put as much time, attention, and money into their business development as I think they should. And I know I'm not alone in that experience and opinion. And there are reasons why some, I'm an enrolled agent, so I'll use EAs as an example. There's a reason that most EAs, quite frankly, even those in private practice, the median income of an enrolled agent is somewhere around $40,000 to $60,000 a year in the United States. But there are enrolled agents that are making 7 figures. Okay, why is there that much disparity in the income between EAs that are running tiny firms? Why is that? Okay. And so if you start looking at why that disparity exists, well, systems is definitely one of them, but a huge one is business development. Just the fundamental marketing, lead generation practices, the fundamental lead and prospect follow-up practices, and then the salesmanship, right? If you own the company, you are responsible for driving revenue. And a lot of accountants, they'll say a very similar thing to their small business clients, but then for some reason they have blinders on about it applying in their own business. Okay. So yes, you may see yourself as an EA or a CPA or a tax preparer or a tax attorney, but you're also a business owner. And if you're the business owner, you're responsible for driving prospects, clients that pay you money to do the thing that you do. So it's an uncomfortable reality for a lot of folks, but marketing legend Dan Kennedy put it this way. He says, whatever your technical specialty is, whether you're a plumber or a lawyer, doesn't matter. You're that thing second. You're a marketing and sales professional first and foremost. And I talk about this in the book. And one of the big things in relation to that is this topic of making offers. Accountants, I think that we tend, accountants, engineers, we tend to be the, let me do my work in the basement, don't touch my stapler kind of people, but if you own the business, you're also the rainmaker. And so you have to do the things that make the rain come. And a big part of salesmanship and marketing is very, very basic. It's making more offers. And what I mean by that is that the leads that you generate from your marketing, you should follow up with them until they buy or die. Okay. Until they unsubscribe, they leave a voicemail saying, don't send me direct mail anymore, whatever it may be. But until that time, you make offers. With tax professionals that are primarily 1040 seasonal driven, one of the biggest mistakes I've seen year after year after year is that they send little to no communication to their existing clients during the course of the year, right? And then they wonder why they're broke in September, why they have no revenue coming in. Well, why aren't you doing tax planning during the end of the year? Why aren't you bringing in tax planning revenue by sending a tax planning appointment offer to your existing seasonal tax prep clients? I kid you not, if your typical EA, CPA, and private practice, even unlicensed return preparer, if they did that one thing, a lot of them could massively increase their revenues every year, right? And when you make offers to your existing email list, which everybody should be building, that's probably a whole other hour conversation. But when you send a newsletter every month to your existing clients and your best prospects, and I talk about how to filter those out in the book into different, your A pile, your B pile, your C pile. You do treat them a little bit differently. But for your clients and best prospects, they should be getting a monthly newsletter, by which I mean pen and ink, paper and ink, postal service or FedEx delivery, physical, not just email. And there's a ton of reasons why that is so incredibly effective, but you have to include offers in there for, schedule your tax planning appointment, schedule your expense reduction consulting appointment for businesses. If you're going into advisory, there's all types of strategic consulting offers that you can make. If you also do financial planning in your practice, there's obviously a ton of offers that you should be making. And because things about the economy and the stock market and everything are all over the media all the time, there are endless opportunities, whether the market is up or the market is down, doesn't matter. There's always endless opportunities to tie into what the media is already talking about, so people are aware of it, and you can make offers surrounding that. Hey, the Fed just raised, the federal funds rate by 75 basis points. Let's schedule an appointment to discuss what that means to you in your retirement, because the average person doesn't know. Okay, so there's constant things that you can tie offers to. So accountants don't reach out enough to their prospects, leads, unconverted leads, past clients that they haven't seen in a couple of years. They don't reach out often enough to them and make the ask. You have to ask for the sale, which means making offers.
And are you saying the vehicle to deliver these offers is best produced in a written newsletter, physical newsletter every month? So you should be dropping one offer once a month at a minimum in a print newsletter. Is that what you're saying?
In the book, I talk about this having multimedia offers. And so you want a robust follow-up system. This is actually a separate, very related big idea in the book. You want to show up in their mailbox, okay? And before people scoff at that idea, understand that there is less competition in the mailbox today than there was 20 years ago. There's just less physical mail. And so it's actually more impactful when it shows up, okay? That's just one media. You want a multimedia approach. So I firmly believe every firm should have a monthly newsletter, physical. Every firm should have a weekly email that goes out, and they should have a lead capture on their website. They should have a subscription link in the maybe in their email signature line, to be able to capture people that they engage with all the time. Maybe mention it on their business card or on their brochure. Writing a book is better than a business card or a brochure. Books are an instant authority piece. I believe most professional service providers should write a book. There's a reason I've now written 13 of them, right? So so you mentioned your email sign up there. So you have weekly emails. I believe that you should call, right? I mentioned earlier, a lot of tax preparers, they have communication with their tax prep clients once a year. To me, that's insane. Absolutely insane, right? This is somebody that's paying. You should call them occasionally.
So Jason, just two quick follow-ups. I'll start with the first one. I would say holistically, I think the approach sounds amazing. I think our listeners hearing it, multimedia approach, probably one of the early pushbacks, you probably heard this a million times, is, well, how much time should I be allocating? So if this is my role, if I should make this a priority, how should I start thinking about my own personal time allocation towards making this a reality? Is this 10 to 15 hours a week? And hopefully the systems, if you start there, will get you the 10 hours and 15 hours.
Right.
But what is the right time commitment to prioritize this? How do I know it's a priority in my firm? What do you see as the range?
It really depends on what phase your business is in and what your end goal is. So as Stephen Covey said, begin with the end in mind, right? If you're 70 years old and you're looking to just kind of wind things down over the next 5 or 10 years into retirement, then maybe you're not doing any of this stuff because you don't care about growth at all. And you're okay with clients that just kind of go elsewhere over time. Okay. That's one extreme. The other extreme is the 26-year-old that just punched their CPA ticket yesterday. And as soon as they had their own CPA license in hand, they quit their job at their regional accounting firm they worked for, and they go out and hang their own shingle because they want to be an entrepreneur. Okay. Two very different places in life. That younger person, they have no clients at all. Marketing and sales for them just became a 60-hour-a-week job. That is their only job, right? So in between those two extremes, you have somebody that's maybe been in business for 10 or 20 years, and maybe they want to grow a little bit, but they're not ambitiously looking to expand into a multi-office situation. Well, even that person should be spending, 3 to 5 hours a week minimum on marketing. And it's not always necessarily just them smiling and dialing, writing content, whatever. It can be the management of virtual assistants, that are doing that work, staff members that are doing that work. And then for somebody that's I've primarily worked with practitioners that are bolting on an additional service. And when you bolt on an additional service, whether it's tax planning, advisory, tax resolution, et cetera, there's a whole, it's like starting a new business, right? You just but you have the benefit of the cash flow from the other business to support the new launch, right? And so it's like the tech person that has one successful startup under their belt. It's way easier for them to start the next one because they can put in several million of their own capital and they have a proven track record. It's easier for them to raise outside capital, right? So it's easier. But from a time commitment perspective, if you're bolting on a new service to your practice, yeah, that's a 15 to 20 hour a week marketing responsibility, in addition to whatever your other client service responsibilities are. And so you have to have the systems and the staff that liberate you from other things so that you can focus on doing that. So does that make sense? I mean, it really depends on what phase of business you're in.
No, I love it. It sounds great. Well, we could go on and on and on. I have one final question before we talk about how people can get a hold of the book. But you mentioned something, and I don't know if it's really been discussed on the show, where you talked about categorizing your prospects. So unpack that a little bit for me. What does that mean? And what are some examples of how you would kind of have your premium leads, your less than premium leads, and how that shows up for a typical accounting or tax firm?
Sure. So this is big idea number 3. I call it choose thy clients wisely. And I think the place that I like to start with on this is the principle that not everybody that walks in the door is appropriate as a client for your firm. And I've gotten a lot of pushback on this from some people over the years. I'll never forget, in 2019, I was doing a live workshop over Zoom, multi-day workshop thing for about a dozen practitioners. And there was one CPA that couldn't wrap his brain around this because he kept saying, so what you're telling me to do is to turn away paying clients. And I said, yes. Okay. If they're not a good fit for your firm, then refer them out. Don't take them on. And so this principle of having only clients that are a good fit for what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to build in your practice, it's part and parcel to filtering your leads, prospects, and existing clients, especially if you're trying to transition your firm into a different specialty or serving a specific industry or profession, right? And so you may be going from a general 1040 prep practice and you're morphing into an advisory focused practice focused on medical and dental offices. Okay. That's a multi-year transition. You're going to be shedding clients that don't fit. And when you are doing your marketing to bring in new clients, you are laser targeting your marketing efforts only to those dentists and medical offices. Okay. So that's the filtering mechanism. And again, I get a lot of pushback on this. But if you look at any successful business and you look at their arc, they started with a very specific product early on, and they didn't really expand until they got huge. So look at Ford. We know Ford today as a maker of trucks and cars and commercial vehicles and now electric vehicles, right? But when they started, they made one car and you could get it in any color you wanted as long as it was black, right? That's the old joke. But now they make a ton of different vehicles but what don't they make? Well, they don't make mattresses. They don't make washers and dryers. They don't make CD players. They don't make computers. They don't make desks and chairs. They make vehicles. Okay. So they're still specialized, even though they're big and they've grown. So there's a lot we can learn from these bigger companies. If you look at, there's lessons to be had in looking at the history of large public accounting firms. So, I'll look at something like largest accounting firm on the West Coast out here, Moss Adams. They started by very, very laser focusing on providing audit services to the telecom and heavy construction industries. That's how they started. That's how they built that company, right? Do they do more now? Obviously, because they're huge. I think they're number 12 or 13 or something like that on the IPA 100. But when they started, they were heavily niched and they were a smaller accounting firm. Okay. But then they grew within those niches, used those profits to expand the business. Okay. So become a specialist. Everybody's heard the phrase riches and niches, and they've probably dismissed it for an accounting practice. Well, if you are a 1040 practitioner primarily, and you want to make more money, then I hope that you realize that you need to start offering higher dollar, higher value services. Okay. And so in order to do that, you need to start filtering the clients that you work with. And say you're going to niche and say you're going to do, bookkeeping services for, and payroll for businesses with 50 employees or more. Okay. Within 50-mile radius of your city. Okay. If that's going to be the niche that you go after, then anybody that comes to you that's not part of that niche, they're not in the A pile. And you have to decide where they go, if they have a place at all. Maybe you can't afford yet to tell them no, which is fine, but they're in the B or C pile. Then you have your existing clients. You have to analyze, okay, who are the people that and everybody has these clients. Who are the people that I dread receiving a phone call from? Who are the people that do nothing but just royally tick me off every time they're sitting in the chair in front of me? Okay. Those people aren't worth your time. Kick them to the curb. Fire your worst clients. The people that tick you off, that frustrate you, that don't pay their bill on time, that argue about their invoice, any of those things, they're the first to go. Okay. That's where you start the filtering. And then you filter your way up, again, transitioning a practice into a more profitable specialty or target market. It's usually a 2 to 3 year process. Most firms can't afford financially to pull the plug on one thing and go whole hog on another thing.
Well, Jason, I absolutely agree with riches and niches. And I could tell you, just to validate everything you said around this, is I can't recall a single interview we've done from a firm owner that accelerated and blew through the 7-figure milestone that hadn't niched down and could clearly articulate it. Now, there is so much, we barely brushed the surface of 3 of the 12, but for somebody listening, if they want to reach out, dig in, buy the book, get a hold of you, what is the best way for them to connect with either you or your content?
So I don't do social media. I'm anti-social media. So don't try finding me on any of the socials. My blog directly, jassenbowman.com. My first name is spelled a little different. It's JASSENBOWMAN.com. And then obviously they can find the book, Profit Optimizers, 12 Big Ideas for a More Profitable Tax Firm. They can find that on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere fine books are sold.
Wonderful. Well, look, if you're listening to the show and you couldn't jot down everything we talked about today, we're going to do a full write-up at jetpackworkflow.com/blog. That's jetpackworkflow.com/blog. We're going to link up to the book. We're going to highlight key takeaways. And if you enjoyed this interview, please leave a review. Helps us get the word out. If you really loved it, share it with a fellow firm owner that might be struggling to add more profit to the firm. I know Jason will appreciate it. I will appreciate it. And once again, Jason, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you, David. I had a good time.